Welcome to l'Arte dell'Armi, the Bolognese podcast, where we discuss the intricacies of the Bolognese tradition with the practitioners, translators, authors, and teachers working to bring the art back to life. Today's guest is Moreno Dei Ricci, instructor at Sala de Armi, Guardia de Croce. Moreno has been practicing martial arts for over 20 years. Moreno, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you all. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely, it's great to have you. Moreno, you are an incredibly dynamic and beautiful fencer, I would say. You have such grace of movement. Tell me a little bit about your martial arts background and how you got started in the Bolognese system.
Oh, thank you for the accomplishes. Well, I'm starting as a kid in the scholar period with boxing, and I'm starting my martial art experience in this sports, in this arts, boxing. But I have always been passionate about the medieval history. Each branch, I think, like all historical fencer today, each branch was a sword for me. And I always cultivated a martial baggage that brought me closer to my passion of history. For example, in addition to the boxing, I approached the archery and after the historical archery, because the normal archery for me is not good, but historical archery is fantastic for my philosophy and for my passion of martial arts. Until one day, I wanted to be studying the swords more seriously, in part thanks to the historical reenactment that I did. Yes, the historical reenactment in Italy is very strange because it's full of swords, but with a few serious scholars. And for me, it's not sufficient for my experience with the swords and for the martial arts. And I was scholar period in the same time on my boxing experience. I managed to get a photocopies of the Tallofer. Yes, of course, the Tallofer. My first source is a German source because in Italy Tallofer is very famous in the past. And I take the Tallofer, and with my friends, I started my adventure with the swords until my dear friends forced me to go to a HIMA Sala presentation, the Sala d'Armi Achille Marozzo, the presentation. And at first I wasn't convinced, but it took me a little to realize that HIMA was the right place for me. A year later, I meet Roberto Gotti, who had a Sala in my city. I'm very lucky because Roberto Gotti is present in my city. And Brescia is a small city in the northern Italy. And the main focus was on the Marozzo two-handed sword for Roberto Gotti. And I feel this very, very good for me. And I had found my way. And since then I can't imagine anywhere else to studying and practice the HIMA now. And this is my small story in the starting to studying martial arts.
No, that's awesome. I think it's really interesting that you started boxing at such a young age. Is that something that you do a lot in Italy? You do a lot of boxing?
For me, it's very important, the boxing background, because the boxing is a true sports, and is the true punch in your face is a true punch in your face.
Yeah.
And this is important to understand the martial arts philosophy behind these words.
That's awesome. So, I mean, what is it like training with Roberto Gotti? I mean, he's been such a pioneer, especially for the Bolognese system, and the reconstruction of the Bolognese system.
Yes, Roberto Gotti, it's a very important figure for me. because Roberto Gotti lives for the swords. He's not only a passionate of the martial arts of the Bolognese system, but he lives for the Bologna, for the fencing, for the historical fencing. Not only Bolognese, not only Italian, because he's very passionate of the all forms of martial arts. And he created a fantastic place. Guy Ratings is the name of this place. Inside the Guy Ratings is a present a Sala d'Armi, is a present a gym, is a present a museum, because Roberto Gotti is, I think, is the most bigger collector of swords, original historical swords, not only for Renaissance period, but he's starting to collect prehistoric tools, prehistoric goods, and in the all parts of the history is present object in the museum. And this is fantastic because you can study not only the words of the master, but you can touch a sword, you can touch a original treatise inside this fantastic museum, and you can feel not only words, but you can feel, you can touch the history behind the martial arts, the European martial arts. And that's very great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And of course, Roberto is not only a collector, he's a instructor, he's a maestro in Italy. And the training with Roberto is hard because for him it's not important the small techniques performed well, but the true sense of the gesture is what he considers essential. But to do this is very, very, very hard. Because to seek a right energy, a cultivation of the rich dynamic, it's very hard. The fundamentals is the first things of Roberto Gotti. It's not only a technique, it's not only a small and thin words of the master, but the deeply word of the master is very important, the fundamentals. And this is great for me, but it's very hard.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's a great approach. You know, when you and Jacopo came to the US for WMAW, you kind of turned a lot of people's interpretations of Marazzo's first assaulti for the two-handed sword on their heads. How did you guys kind of come to that interpretation? And what was it like to receive such glowing praise for that presentation? Because it seems like it's been really well received.
Thank you. The main merit goes to Roberto, of course, because Roberto make a sense many interpretation, and he has shown us not only a gesture, but show us a method of studying. This is the most important things, because it's not important to improve our gesture, but the main important things is a method of studying. And for that, he helped us in the studying and in the elaboration of our interpretation, not stopping at the mere interpretation of the words of the master, of the Asian master, but seeking in the real dynamics of gesture the answers. Verify again and verify again in our practice. And the interpretation is the basis of our school. Every dynamic must be tried and tried again for feel a right interpretation for us. Not only in a solo training, but firstly in the real application. The real application for us, of course, is the sparring, but not only a gesture behind the words, but the application of this gesture with a good dynamics and good force behind these words. And of course, for us to receive so many compliments in WMAW is a source of pride, because these compliments encourage us and me to continue this road without stopping. regardless of what the people say, because many people don't share this type of approach. But for my field, for my philosophy, this is only one approach to continue the seeking good interpretation, but with a good dynamic, with a good gesture, not only only a gesture.
Yeah, I mean, just recently you posted a video on YouTube of you executing the falso impuntanto and Morato's first assaulti in live sparring, and the setup to that was just absolutely beautiful, and the fact that you were able to pull it off with such proficiency was really impressive.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Thank you for this, because this video is very small video, is 4 seconds, but behind these 4 seconds in a free sparring is present many months of studying of this small gesture of the falacata, for example. Mm-hmm. And this is our philosophy, many hours behind the 2 seconds of gesture.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, and emphasizes something that I think is incredibly beneficial to understand, that sometimes such a simple technique, really kind of just one sentence in Marazzo's paragraph of a technique for the first play can take months or hours of study, or really just months of study to really kind of hone in and develop, and how you can really kind of piece apart different things to really focus on the intricacies of a specific technique.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm gonna take it a little bit of an aside here. I want to ask a quick question that I was just thinking about when you were talking about Roberto's museum. You're talking about handling swords, historical swords. Of the HEMA trainers that you've experienced, whether they're like Reginier swords or Malus Martialis, what are some of the swords that you think best represent historical swords?
The sword is not important for me. Not the historical swords, of course. The historical swords is fantastic. I like it, and I take many moments for me to studying the original swords. Mm-hmm. The modern swords to the practice is not important for me. Is the best things is the gesture, not what you have in your hands. Gotcha. This is in my mind is main focus. The swords to replicate the interpretation or the correct approach in the fighting. Okay, is good. Of course, we need good swords to the practice, but for the security in the first. For the second, of course, to the feeling, a right feeling with the swords, because when I use for the rapier a modern fencing épée is not good because many dynamics change. Mm-hmm. But we are very lucky because in the world is present many guys to produce a good swords for all feeling and interpretation of what is a sword in our hands.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a really cool perspective. So when it comes to the 4 core authors, do you have a favorite?
Oh yes, of course. Marozzo in the first place in my heart. Marozzo is undoubtedly the master who studied more, but his study cannot take a place without the study of many other masters that I consider essential, starting from Fiore, for example, Vadi in a second place, Monte, Anonimo Bolognese, and the other, all the other Italian master of the 16th century is very important for me. Of course, my focus is in the two-handed swords, and for the Italian system, for the Bolognese system, Marozzo is the first master, because is the only one master explain completely system of behind the two-handed swords. But I don't want to stay closed to only one master. For me, it's very important to my approach to the studying other master for seeking fundament, because the fundamentals for me is the much important things in my studying. And of course, Marozzo for me is the most elegant and complete master of the Bolognese system. But without other master, it's not possible to interpreting Marozzo, because Marozzo is a very real bastard. He don't tell us nothing. He explain a gesture, but not explain a real deeply fundament in behind this gesture, because Marozzo want to seeking the good gesture, not only a small or a normal gesture. He want to you studying hard and to seeking a good fighting behind the trapeze. And but to do this is very important to studying other master. Of course, Marozzo in the first in my heart, but other master is very important.
Yeah, you've done a lot with two-handed sword, but also with the partisan. Can you speak to a little bit about that, about the work that you've done with the partisan?
Oh yes, I'm started to studying the partisan because for me the partisan and the other pole arms inside the Bolognese trapeze is very important to understanding other parts of many weapons, especially the two-handed swords. Because the partisan and the other pole arms, you stay behind this weapon with all your body, with all two-handed in the surface of this weapon, and it's very important to improve the capacity to feel you free behind this weapon, because for my experience, behind this long weapon, you feel not free in the fighting, but it's not true. We are free not for how you can stay in your hand, what weapon you use, but the important is you control of your body and the studying of the partisan and the two-handed sword. But the partisan in the first place help us to understanding the dynamics behind behind the body, behind the weapon in the fighting. And of course the partisan is very fantastic for me, because it's not only a pole weapon, it's not a simply spears, but the partisan is have a long blade, and we can use for the thrusting and for the cutting. And for my personal opinion, this is a fantastic weapon to the studying two-handed sword, because it's very long, it's very difficult to manage, but he take all your energy, your mind energy, because it's very difficult to manage. And this is fantastic, because after, when I use a partisan and I take in my hand the long sword, it's fantastic, because the long sword is very simple respect to the partisan, but the partisan is very fantastic to improve our capacity to manage the long sword and other weapons, of course.
Yeah. How do you think about, the Spiedo? I'm kind of getting the sense that the Spiedo is just kind of a partisan with the wing protrusions, the wings that stick out of the partisan. Have you done a lot of work with the Spiedo as well?
Oh yes, it's very similar weapon, but the Spiedo have these wings is very interesting, because the maestri, Marozzo in particular, explain us to use the Spiedo with the wings to take the weapon of our opponent, and you can use this wing, for example, to parry, like a cross guard of the swords, for example. It's fantastic because it's a strange weapon, because it's like a bat. The wing of this bat is very useful because we can use in for many things inside the fighting, and this is very fantastic. When I studying the Spiedo with the partisan, of course, I feel this difference with the partisan because it's a bastard weapon, the Spiedo, because these wings is very difficult to manage, but it's very fantastic when you feel these wings you can use to parry, you can use for take the swords of your opponent to parry the strike and the thrust. The pole arms in general is fantastic, but the Spiedo is a curious weapon, but the partisan is very elegant, is much elegant respect to other pole arms. Is very, very elegant. And in the ancient source, not only the treatise, but for example, in the chronicles of Italy of the 16th century, in all fighting, in all city fighting is a present partisans. And I think the partisans is much present like a sword in the past, in the Italian part. And for me, the answer is a fantastic weapon, very, very simply, not very simply to use, but is very instinctive to use. But you can use these pole arms like a sword, you can use like a spears, and with a very fantastic, elegant movement behind this weapon.
Yeah, whenever I think about the partisan, a lot of times I kind of think of that image of Marazzo from the text, where he's standing and he has his two students on either side of him, and one of them, has a spear. And I always think of it really as a core foundation that I think a lot of times gets overlooked. I mean, I know a lot of people come into HEMA because of swords and they love swords, but at the same time, I feel like, really to, like you were saying, to get a full grasp of the system, we really do need to look at the core weapons. And I think the partisan is a core Bolognese weapon. Have you done anything with the spear in Marazzo?
For the spears? No, for Marozza, I'm studying only a partisan Spiedo and pike.
I got you. And I might be talking about the pike material in Marazzo when I talk about the spear. It might have been translated as spear.
Oh, sorry.
No, yes, that's okay. Let me grab the text real quick and see what it has.
Yes, because inside the Marozzo explain lanciotto, spears, or pikes. For Marozzo, spears and pikes is the same weapon.
Gotcha. Yeah. And there's something interesting in Manciolino, where Manciolino is talking about fighting with longer weapons. At the end of his introduction, he talks about how he relates the partisan to fighting with a dagger, and he relates the two-handed sword, or maybe a sword, I can't remember, to fighting with a lance or a spear. I always found that really interesting, that he relates the partisan to sort of equating to when you're fighting with pole arms, saying that it's the same as fighting with a dagger.
Yeah.
Just because, when you think about dagger combat, you think about it being very close, very sharp. You're always having to be worried about the fact that you're going to get stabbed. Because
when you have a long weapon in your mind, you are many time and space to manage your enemy. But with the long weapon is not true, because in 1 second you cannot use the weapon because it's much longer for example, a close measure, and it's fantastic to say to use in a good mode a dagger, for example. And the dagger is very important to the starting the pole arms, but to the starting for the close game in all parts of the treatise, because for example in the longsword the third part of the assault is only of the close game, and many times a dagger is very good to in your hand when you are in the close game, especially with the pole arms.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I think even Manciolino has a technique where you pull out your dagger and then you stab somebody when you have a pole arm.
In the Spiedo is a present this in Marozzo. When he explain a Spiedo, the dagger is a present for the close game. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That makes sense too with the Spiedo, I guess, because you can kind of hook them with your wings and pull their weapon offline and then run in and just stab them. So, when you've been working on developing your techniques, what are some of the challenges you've faced and how have you overcome them? And
as I said, Marozzo demands sacrifice for the interpretation. So everything is difficult at first time, of course, for all of us, for all the students of historical fencing. Creating a contact with the master is important for me. Read and read again. The book is very important. I think I want to think in the language of the master. Is the one of the things that I consider of great importance. The interpretation are the engine of every scholar of HEMA. Continuous practice leads to a continuous evolution of the interpretation, especially to continuous the application of this interpretation in a real context, in a free sparring, for example. We need to analyze the many aspects of the leads to what is considered a good interpretation. For example, when the study of the part of the treatise is undertaken, it's necessary to not only stop as the aspect related to the specific weapon, but for example, it's necessary to continuously cross the other parts of the treatise. Marozzo, we can find many interpretation of many gestures, not only, for example, in longsword, but is present many interpretation of the longsword is present in other parts or in other weapon. For example, the infallacciata or camuffo is the cavazione of the weapon. You can find a good interpretation or good exposition of the master in the pikes, because in the pikes he exposed very well the cavazione, the fallacciata, the cavazione of the weapon. And this is fantastic because inside the same book we can find instruments for a good interpretation. But for make this is very hard. And not only with the treatise of the master, the study master, for example, I not close my interpretation only with the treatise of Marozzo, but I seek other interpretation to crossing my interpretation, the crossing the source with other master, Pietromonte, Manciolino, and other Italian weapon master. Is very important to crossing the source with water. And we have found a solution to unclear interpretation that are found in other parts, in other weapon, in other treatise, for example.
Yeah, I think that's it is sort of a theme, especially in Marozzo, where other weapons will inform different things. Like when I was looking for a better explanation to how Marozzo in his sword and large buckler does the mulinetto, he actually gives a really great explanation of how to do the mulinetto by letting your sword drop down to the left and letting it. It's a reverso mulinetto. He does it in the sword and dagger section, right? So I found an answer for the technique of the seventh play of sword and large buckler by going back and looking at sword and dagger, and otherwise it would have been really hard because he doesn't give the explanation of how to do the technique. He just tells you to do it. But if you go back and I guess if you read it in order, right, you do the sword and dagger first, you get the explanation what that technique is, and it informs a later technique, and something that's completely unrelated. And
Yeah.
even you look at sword and small buckler, in the introduction of sword and small buckler, he talks about how all the strata techniques that he teaches in sword and small buckler can be used across all weapons. He
Yeah.
says you can do it with a two-handed sword, you can do it with a single-edged sword, is what he's, or a single-handed edged sword. So I think he's talking there about like a sharp, specifically. I don't know how that translates for you, but I find it really interesting that he breaks up so many different things. But if you have that full picture of Marazzo, if you really study the entire system, you can fill in the gaps that are missing.
Yes, of course. Marozzo, I repeat this. Marozzo and other master demand sacrifice and many hours of studying and to feeling the master. Not only read, not only speak of the master, not only the words of the master you feel. The sacrifice is to create a connection with the master for seeking a good interpretation of the words of this master.
Yeah, no, that's I think that's really insightful. I mean, that's a beautiful way to put it, because I think that I think that helps a lot of people to understand, because I think that's a really great perspective, in terms of how to approach the material, but also in general how to approach martial arts and really kind of develop yourself as a martial artist. And for Hema, because we are recreating a lost art,
Yeah.
sometimes we have to put in even more work because
Yeah.
we don't have existing masters that can sit here and show us the techniques and show us how they're done. Um, you and I are fortunate because we have people who have kind of put in the work before us. You have a great maestro and Roberto Gotti, and I have a great teacher as well, who have put in, tons of hours in studying. But for people who are just getting into it and they might not have that teacher, it really is,
Yes,
it's a
it's
dedication.
not. Yes, it's very important these things because many guys don't have, for example, an instructor. I know I meet many guys, for example, in WMAW. I meet many guys is alone because the USA is very big. It's not like Italy. In Italy, we have a Sala d'Armi in all parts of the city. In all city, you can go in Italy, you can find a Sala d'Armi. But in USA, I meet many guys don't have a master, don't have a teacher, and this is very difficult for these guys to study. But the important is our attitude to studying. Yes, of course, it's much better to have a reference, but the much important things is our self attitude to a good studying. And of course is not simple for these guys, but with the internet is possible now. In the past I don't know, but now with the internet is possible. Yeah.
What are some of the more difficult and techniques that you've found? Things like the trauma zone cello, for example.
Oh yeah. Many gesture of the ancient master is very difficult to the interpretation, but the dynamic behind the interpretation is the most important thing for me. For example, for the interpretation of Tramazzoncello and Tramazzone, we can found our interpretation not only to interpretation of the words, interpretation of the technique, but with the studying the dynamic behind this technique. Because when you try to use these dynamic forces behind the sword in assalto, for example, when you cannot found a good interpretation, you can feel your interpretation are broken. Is broken. The force is broken. The dynamic is broken. And for pass this problem, you can seek different dynamic behind this gesture. For example, for the Tramazoncello, we seek this for a dynamic like the charging of this type of strike. The Tramazoncello, for our interpretation, is not a small tramazzone, because tramazzone in Italian big circulation of the strike, and Tramazoncello is a small, no? But this is not for us sufficient to a good interpretation, and we found a good interpretation of the Tramazoncello for a continued dynamic forces inside the fighting. For example, for us, the Tramazoncello, the difference of Tramazzone and Tramazoncello is the type of charging. Tramazzone charging in the right part of body, and the Tramazoncello in the inside part of body, in the left part. And inside our interpretation, our dynamic interpretation of the assalto, he make a sense, because they don't broken the forces, the dynamic inside the interpretation, but this interpretation can seek good management of the forces inside the assalto. And for us, this is type of concept for a seek a good interpretation. This is a small example, but this small example is present in all parts of our interpretation of the masters, in particularly the Marozzo. But this attitude is very important for us.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So you guys essentially do the Tramazoncello like from Porta de Ferro Larga as an above the blade cavazione down into Cinghiari Porta de Ferro.
Yes, right.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's good. I know I've seen a lot of discussion about that, and people trying to kind of work on various interpretations. So hopefully that helps them out. So how do you see the Bolognese material in context or comparison of other sources or traditions?
Styles may have a formal difference, but for my vision, the fight is one. And the ancient master, I think, consider this this difference is not present. I consider it essential to relate to other sources of other system in order to have a better, clear idea of the martial context. Italian source, of course, however, I consider them very elegant, and the technical precision inside this strategy, this Italian Bolognese system is very fantastic for me, especially in the exposition of the philosophy of the combat. And that should help us to create a code of ethics in our modern practice. Sorry for my bad English.
No, you're fine.
And this is very important to this comparison with the other sources, because I can find for example, in the German sources, I can find many things for the interpretation of the philosophy of the fighting. But I think this source is very important to make sense in our mind for the ethics code. I don't know in English is a good word for explain this, but the philosophy behind martial arts is very important. And I read not only Italian source, I read all, but of course my focus is for a good interpretation, for a good clear idea of the philosophy behind historical fencing, Italian historical fencing.
That's really interesting, because I think that kind of leads into the next question here of like, how do you view the strategic and tactical approach of the Bolognese system?
I think the Bolognese system, the Italian system, is extremely complete, because in the difference, I think the conservative and prudent attitude of the Bolognese system is much more complete in the exposition in comparison of other source of other European sources. The Italian system, yes, of course, is conservative, prudent, but in the same time is aggressive when he serves. Then every master has his own peculiarities. For example, Marozzo is very elegant in the gioco largo, but when he wants to close the game and go in the, for example, in the dagger fighting, is very strong. He's not only conservative and prudent, but he wants broken the enemy in front of him. Mm-hmm. And for me, the Bolognese, the Italian system, the Bolognese system is complete of this attitude: conservative, prudent, but aggressive when he serves.
That's awesome. That's I love that. Because you know, in the introduction of the Anonimo, he gives us such an amazing description of, you know, where he says that you should make yourself look like a devil, you know, when you're fighting.
Yes. Yeah. The introduction, yes, of course, it's fantastic, the elegant footwork, but in the same time, you are a bastard with the swords in the hand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, you're beautiful until you get to the point of striking, and then you're just ruthless and mean and harsh.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny because you know, I feel like it is very much an expression of Italian culture too.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I also think it's really interesting too. You've talked a lot about, especially from your guidance of learning from Roberto, where you're looking for the source of what is the master trying, what's the lesson behind the technique, if that makes sense. You know, like what is the technique actually trying to tell you, versus just doing the technique because it's what the technique tells you to do. And I feel like that is the way that you can really pull the tactical and strategic purpose of what we're doing out. And instead of saying, okay, well, my opponent is in a guard, they're in coda longa stretta or whatever, I'm going to attack them in this way simply because they're in coda longa stretta, versus understanding why you attack them in coda longa stretta in that way and what it is that you're trying to do and create. I think that's really interesting. I think you've really kind of done a great job of highlighting that through our conversation. So, yeah. So, you know, one of the other things that I wanted to really kind of talk about here, because not just from a strategic and tactical sense, but also from just the way that you guys move, you have incredibly dynamic footwork. What do you guys do in training with your footwork, and how do you develop that?
Thank you so much for this question, because the footwork for me is essential for my philosophy of fighting. Of course, the footwork is essential for all my school, of course, because I think the footwork is the basic fundament of the fighters, of the historical fighter, the historical fencer. Personally, I dedicate a lot of time to training my footwork. I look for what the ancient master showed in their treatise. For example, Pietro Monte, in 4 words, explain a fantastic philosophy behind the footwork. A light and elegant footwork, but the very lightly footwork, but in the same time, in the up parts of the body, a strongly attitude. But Monte want a light footwork, because for me, this part is very important, because without a light footwork, it's not possible to make a sense to the right and hard dynamic with the swords. Our legs, our foot is not heavy, is not strong, because when you in our mind put energy to stay in the legs like a car, strong car, is not good for us, because the sword is important to the forces, but the legs is the important things to make a sense the swords in fast time to strike your opponent, for example. And I dedicate many hours of my training to the footwork. Of course, the stars, la stella del passeggio of Marozzo, the footwork stars of Marozzo, is very important to learn. For example, in my school is present these stars, but is not painted to the floor. I explained this footwork training in a video on my page, and for learn my passeggio, I used a raised stakes for seek a good balance in the footwork. Not only the footwork in the floor, but with these raised stakes is possible to seek a good balance, but in the same time with you learn the footwork. And this is an example to my training for learn the passeggio, the footwork. And yes, of course, Pietro Monte summarized my philosophy in a few words. The feet are light and the strength is height. And the same in Marozzo dedicates many words to this. And also other master, the Anonimo Bolognese, for example.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, the footwork is good, is elegant, but you don't forget you are strong with the swords in the hand. But the footwork is the basis, is the first thing in my mind when I fight.
Yeah, same. I mean, that's something that we really emphasize, but something that I think that a lot of people can stand to improve upon, and really kind of focus and provide emphasis to, because I think it does unlock so much potential for your ability to perform the techniques, especially perform the techniques as they relate in sparring, being quick and light, but like you said, strong with the upper body, and be able to press the techniques in a way that is strong. It's really important.
Yeah, because the first problem, many people want in a small time take up the sword and fight, but these people forgot the main tool, footwork. The footwork is the main tool.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. So I mean, I guess we kind of already emphasized this a little bit, but I mean, what is something that you think we as a community can do to better reflect the sources in our fencing?
This is a good question, but in my mind, I want the practitioner to talk less and practice more. I see in the HEMA community our world more and more oriented towards showing more than showing. Our world in the HEMA community, I think, giving more importance to the speaking, but not try to produce something strong, because study and practice more and think less about the commercial aspect of HEMA. Yes, of course, the HEMA is very, posso dire, the HEMA is very fascinating, but it's very important to practice more and talk less, in my vision of HEMA community, because I see in the last period, I think is the COVID problem, because many guys is staying home all day, and I think in the last period the commercial aspect of HEMA is much respect the practice thinking or show or attitude.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting, because you're right in that, there's one thing to read and not, you can't not read and not do. I think I've heard interviews from people in the past talking about how when HEMA was first starting out, a lot of people were on message boards or online,
Yeah.
and so much of it was just conversation about how these things could be done, and then they couldn't actually back it up when they would come out and fence. Um,
Yeah.
and that COVID has kind of forced us to recess a little bit, where everybody has been kind of locked up for a year, and I imagine the fencing in the next year is going to be pretty bad. um, but
Yes.
at the same time, you're right. It is, I've experienced this too, because with the lockdown and everything like that, it has given me an opportunity in my personal practice where I've pushed my personal practice to whole different levels. I'm almost finished with doing all the techniques in Marazzo's second book.
Yeah.
So everything with a single sword and
This is a
stuff.
good approach. This is
It,
a
it is, but at the same time, because I've been developing interpretations
yes.
without a partner, I don't
Yeah.
know if any of those techniques are valid. And until I mean, it's good because now I can take that, and now I can find somebody and pull them aside and say, hey, let's go through these techniques and see, if the techniques work, and make the corrections that I need to. So it's good that in that sense. But if I was just relying on the fact that I've been doing so much book study and tried to take that to a tournament right now, I would get my butt kicked. I would lose so badly. So, but I think you're right in that, less talking, more doing. Get out there, get out there and do it. Um, yeah, that's great. So, because you're in Italy, you have a really uh, unique opportunity in that there are libraries around you, and there are
Yeah.
places where you can go, and there are probably untold number. There are a lot of historical treatises that we haven't found yet.
Yes.
Do you? I mean, do you know if? I mean, are there people that are out there looking and searching for those things and trying to kind of pull those back into the general HEMA consciousness?
Yes, I think the seeking a new treatise, or not only treatise but manuscript,
Hmm.
in Italy, we can found in the future a new treatise. For example, personally, I found a little, very little manuscript of not a master but a student,
Oh,
and I seek this in my city bibliothèque. Bibliothèque is the name, the right name?
yeah, but it works. It translates. Library. Hmm.
Library, yeah, library, yes. In library, in Italian library, historical library is a present for my opinion, much more not only print books, but manuscript, because, for example, I found this new source, and I published them in the next, I think, in the next years. In these years, I publish the source. Oh, this is a spoiler, and is a small manuscript of the students. And I think this type of manuscript is present in all city, not only in Italy, but in the Europe, because the historical document present in our library is very, very big. And is the many of these is not founded because it's too much to studying, not only for the HEMA community, but for the historical community, for the historical professor community, or other guys that are passionate to the historic period. And I think in Italy is present many guys to not only to found, but to studying new sources. And I think in the next year, we see new new sources, and this is fantastic because
Yeah.
for us this is a food of our word, a word, and this is very important because, for example, the Anonimo Bolognese is found in this type of mode. Many guys go to the library and found the fantastic Anonimo Bolognese, and I hope in the next year other many guys approach to not only in for the HEMA, not only for the practice, but for the founding a new source, a new historical source.
Yeah, I think that's something that I wish we could do more of, is really I don't know how to do this, but I would love to see more people going and getting into the libraries. And it's amazing that you have done that. And because I feel like it's so important to helping us understand. I was fortunate to take a class with Tom Leone.
Oh
He
yeah,
gave a lecture on the anonymous treatise that he found. I
yes,
think the Anonymous Vienna.
yeah,
Um, and the Anonymous Vienna is fascinating because it explains Fabris in a way that nobody has really kind of gotten into Fabris before. The dynamics of the way, because the Anonymous Vienna is probably written by a student, sort of like, you found something that was written by
yeah,
not a master, but a student. But the student had written down notes about the intricacy
right.
of the footwork and the things that are typically not necessarily covered by the master. And so it gives us a whole new dimension and a whole new way of approaching Fabris that we never really had before. And I feel like that's out there, and I wish I just
This is fantastic because the vision of the student, of course, is different to the vision of the master. But the vision of the student is very close to the our vision
yeah.
respect to expertise, and this is very important. For example, in the my small sources, I founded 1 year ago, and now I'm working uh, for the publishing this source. Is fantastic because it's not a master; it's a student, and the eyes of each student is my eyes, is our eyes in our time, because he describe and take the notes of the movement of the master, and in the same time this is these guys is me or you, no?
Mhm.
And this is fantastic, and the sources is present. I hope and I wish in the future many people go to the seek these sources. Is present, I think is present because in my experience demonstrating this, you seek, you found.
Mm. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, Marino, I think let's wrap it up there. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for coming on and talking to me about the Bolognese system. You provided some really amazing insights, and I think a lot of people are gonna hopefully find a lot of benefit from our conversations.
I hope. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'm very proud to this opportunity. Thank you so much, JD. Thank you for all guys, HEMA community. I think is very important this type of podcast for improve our vision.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
I want to thank Moreno Dei Ricci for coming on and providing us with another thrilling episode of Le Arte dell'Arme. This is absolutely fantastic. Next week's guest is going to be Eric Weiss, and Eric and I are going to talk about Bolognese horsemanship. That's right, you heard me. Bolognese horsemanship. Um, Eric has a tremendous amount of experience with horsemanship in a theatrical sense, but he is a experienced horseman and jouster, and so we are going to talk about Giovanni dalla Gocchie's jousting chapter, maybe even a little bit of Marazzo's defense against someone on a horse. So stay tuned for that and stay saucy, my friends.